It is easy to confuse pressure with activity. For example, you could throw 100 punches around and not really build from one exchange to the next. And on the other hand, a fighter like Petr Yan is not always throwing strikes or marching forwards, but he is always just encroaching on the end of his opponent's comfort zone, encouraging them to lash out or wrestle, forcing up the pace of the bout, and making his foes exert themselves. The nuts and bolts of Yan's game are relatively simple, but he embodies several important principles which all pressure fighters should aspire to master. Let us talk about the mechanics of the strikes first, though. Here is a clip of Petr Yan and Alexander Volkanovski lightly sparring when they were the UFC bantamweight and featherweight champions. In the course of this short clip, you can see one of the defining features of elite MMA striking in the modern era. Over 20-something seconds, both men switch stances and fight comfortably out of both a southpaw and orthodox position. Yan works from orthodox and southpaw fairly interchangeably, but the important point is that he matches his offense to his opponent's stance. Against orthodox fighters, he goes southpaw to land hard left body kicks and high kicks. Against a southpaw, he will do the same from orthodox stance. A rear-handed slap to body kick off the same side is a Yan staple, raising the opponent's guard just long enough for the kick to slam in and wind them. Jimmy Rivera, Douglas D'Andrade, and even the great Jose Aldo all suffered the effects of this simple setup. Shifting is also a constant in Yan's game. Throwing a 1-2, he will shift in for the third blow. This is a simple way to make distance and hammer a retreating opponent just as they should be dropping out of range. The last punch can be an up jab, a wide swing, a body shot, but that is the one that Yan is normally aiming to score with in the setup. A similar shifting principle can be seen in Yan's favourite tackle, a step through double leg wherein he shifts and attacks the double with his head on the opponent's far hip. Yan also loves a dipping lead hook, throwing his lead arm wide while leaning his head offline. He scores these while backing up, and will sometimes perform them in conjunction with a retreating shift into the opposite stance. He uses them to grab collar ties and initiate clinches, and also to hammer the opponent over the head as he exits clinches. The last look is one that Igor Vovchanchin had a lot of success with in his no-holds-barred career, particularly after a nice knee to the cup first. Having competence off both stances allows Yan to bring a few different looks offensively, but more importantly, it assists in mid-fight adjustments and problem solving. Against Jose Aldo, Yan was having trouble with Aldo's wickedly fast jab and right low kick. Initially, Yan tried to check Aldo's jab by cross-hand checking from the orthodox stance, reaching his own left hand across his centre line to obstruct the path of Aldo's. This is an unusual look, which Yan has shown against D'Andrade and Sterling, and which Lorenz Larkin regularly uses to set up body kicks and counter right hands. However, Yan still found himself eating low kicks and jabs, so he switched to southpaw for most of the fight. Mirroring Aldo's stance, his lead hand was now on top of Aldo's, allowing him to obstruct Aldo's jab more consistently between sneaking in good 1-2s of his own. But Yan wasn't out of the woods. Aldo's right low kick now became a body kick, and Yan could be seen committing to a cross check with his lead leg throughout the bout to prevent himself from getting winded. Now let's discuss some of the pressure fighting principles that allow Yan to consistently overwhelm world-class fighters. The first and most important is that Yan rarely allows the opponent to smother his offense. Whether it's a full-on clinch, a takedown attempt, or a simple step inside, getting chest to chest with a fighter kills his ability to strike in combinations. Being able to break the clinch is vital to keeping a high pace and exhausting an opponent. Yan is one of about a dozen guys in MMA who have been consistently great clinch strikers. When you are chest to chest, you cannot strike effectively. Small adjustments have to be made to create space to strike. Compare a chest-to-chest clinch with a good collar tie or head post. There is now enough space between the fighters to put some authority on an elbow or knee. Fighters like Jan, Matt Brown, Leon Edwards, and Marlon Vera are especially good at making these little adjustments to score blows. Jan especially likes to get wrist control and drive his opponent's hand down. From an over-under clinch, this removes their underhook and ability to pull him in. From a wrestling perspective, Jan can threaten an arm drag. From a striking perspective, he has created space and removed his opponent's distance control, while also pulling their guard down as far from their head as possible. Many opponents eat elbows from Jan in this position. He will also occasionally flank opponents from this position and hit an Osotogari. This brings us to the second facet of breaking the clinch: trips and sweeps. In Muay Thai, a good sweep or throw is rewarded with a cheer from the crowd. In MMA, it can mean the thrown fighter spends the rest of the round on the bottom trying to build back up. In fact, when compared to traditional double legs and single legs, foot sweeps and trips often carry a fighter past his opponent's guard or leave him standing as his opponent goes to the floor, allowing a quick entry with strikes or a stacking pass on his own terms. A trip or sweep requires little commitment. Take what judo calls the Sasai Surakomiashi. Like any trip, the opponent is forced to step, and that step is blocked. He will either fall or stumble and catch himself. In MMA, a completed trip is top position. And a failed trip is the chance to continue striking, often with the opponent off balance and with their hands out of position. Matt Brown embodied the striking clinch in MMA for a long time, battering opponents with elbows and knees when they stood still, and off-balancing them with trips when they tried to close. Jan is proving a worthy successor to Brown, though. Another important principle of pressure fighting is to attack the body. While we have already looked at Jan's love of body kicking, body strikes on the ground are a seriously overlooked weapon in MMA, particularly when standing in the guard of an opponent. Jan and Jorge Masvidal have found great success throwing straight shots down on the solar plexus. A final principle of pressure fighting that makes Jan an incredibly flustering opponent is his commitment to punishing kicks. Kicks are powerful and potential fight enders. Keeping an opponent on the back foot is a good way to stop them kicking. But if they do kick, a pressure fighter should be working to punish every kick thrown. Jan regularly snatches up kicks to complete trips or takedowns, then holds the opponent down, punishing them for as long as he can. Not only is this a free takedown against a one-legged opponent, it discourages them from kicking in future, and their options rapidly narrow down to backing up, punching wildly, and attempting takedowns. Petr Yan hasn't looked unbeatable. He has had a lot of trouble with low kicks from Aldo, Jimmy Rivera, and even Aljamain Sterling, particularly when distracted by convincing boxing work. He is also less effective when put on the back foot, though in some of his bouts he has opted to stay on the back foot for a surprisingly long time, before coming forward and overwhelming the opponent anyway. Then there is his love of fouling. It is notable that Jan's only losses have come as the result of a point deduction and a DQ for obvious illegal actions that he had no need to be doing. But this weekend, Jan fights another high-paced switch hitter in Corey Sandhagen, and it is hard to imagine that not going off as an absolute banger. I make these videos for fun and they aren't monetized, but if you want to check out my other work, I host the Jack Slack podcast twice a week and write articles at fightprimer.com, and I debunk Musasi's record on Twitter at JackSlackMMA. Cheers.